fear results from the thought of taking a risk, not from the actual taking of the risk. When we think about getting on a roller coaster that's really fast and steep and scary, it's the thought in the mind when that bar goes down over our waist and we start going up that first hill before the first drop that puts our heart rate up and our heart in our throat. We're terrified at the thought of what's about to happen. Once we go over the top and that roller coaster takes the first dive, what happens? The fear goes away. It's replaced with joy and jubilation and excitement, so much so that we get to the back, we run off the ride and get to the back of the line to go do it again. Business is just like that. It's the thought of taking a big risk that stops most people because of the sensation of fear. So what that translates to is I'm afraid every day of my life. I never got over the fear. Don't ever try to get over the fear or you will be one very frustrated individual. Fear is there for a reason. There's been times when I've been fearful and I didn't do a deal because it just wasn't right. But I don't let fear stop me. That's the primary difference. I know I'm afraid every day if I'm going to take on a big change or challenge. By the way, fear is the sensation associated with the thought of taking a risk, and risk is always associated with a big change or big challenge. Could be financial, relational, spiritual, dietary, monetary. Think about it. Big risk is going to involve one of those categories. The thought of making a big change or big challenge, taking on a big challenge in your life is going to elicit fear. And most people listening to your podcast will quit, will not pursue it because of that sensation. I say when you're feeling fear associated with the thought of taking a risk, you're on the right track. Don't let it stop you.
So to follow up with what you just said, it sounds to me like what you do is actually shift your focus a little bit, right? I mean, to break through it, kind of walk through it, like to get on that roller coaster and get through it and go up there.
I'm just not going to let fear stop me, Peter. I just know, in short, get the mind right and the money will follow. Get the mind right and the miles will follow with this race I do in Death Valley. If the mind isn't right, none of those things happen. So most of life, even in the physical aspect, in the sport that I choose to pursue as a hobby, which is ultra marathoning, it's 80% mental. Mm-hmm. If I were to go run a 100-mile race in a month, I probably can only get my physical body in 10% better shape, but I need to get my mind in about 50% better shape. So this is of the 7 books I've written, Aspire is the first mindset book. And the subtitle really says it all: how to create your own reality and alter your DNA. Because I'm kind of concerned, if not tired, of having people that are watching this podcast allow outside forces to create their reality for them instead of them creating their own. So that's the big mindset shift, Peter, is that that through aspiration, not through motivation and not through inspiration, but through aspiration, you can create your own reality and in turn alter a DNA from what you were born to be, if that's not what you want, to become what you want to be. And it's happened to me in 5 instances in my life. Only 5 times have I aspired to something greater than I could ever have imagined. So I want your viewer to focus on motivation washes off and goes down the drain with the soap at night. As a species, guys, we were not meant to stay motivated. We can't stay motivated. Hence the reason for the multi-billion-dollar motivation business. Mm-hmm. If we could stay motivated, there wouldn't be such a business. So if me and Jason and Peter did a bad job today, all we will have done was motivated you, because it will wash off and go down the drain with the soap in the shower tonight. Don't beat yourself up over the fact you can't stay motivated anymore. I can't. What about inspiration, Frank? I mean, okay, I have trouble with motivation because it doesn't last for me, but boy, I love feeling inspired. That's the point. Feeling inspired. Inspiration lasts about as long as a bad sunburn. Longer than motivation, but eventually, like a sunburn, it dissipates. And here's how. You watch an inspirational movie. You read an inspirational book. It'll stay with you, but not for life. It will eventually dissipate like the sunburn. It's aspiration, guys, that will change the DNA. You can use motivation and inspiration to ignite aspiration. So my question, and I know this is a long kind of diatribe, the question for you to ask yourself is, what legacy do I aspire to leave behind? You don't answer that right now. It's something you really got to look in the mirror and think about. What legacy do I aspire to leave behind? And part of helping you answer that question is an easier one and a more fun question. Who do I aspire to emulate to get me there, to get me to that legacy I aspire to leave behind? So for me, you know, like I didn't have the education. I aspired to emulate fictional characters. Willy Wonka. Look at some of my grand unveilings. Very Willy Wonka-esque. Robin Hood. I am a modern day Robin Hood. I built 29 self-sufficient villages in the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere. I don't steal from the rich. I sell to them and I give to the poor. So identifying who you aspire to emulate and then answering that question, what legacy do I aspire to leave behind, creates these lifelong aspirations that are sacred. It's like a Fabergé egg, only it's a Fabergé box. They are sacred. Like when I run these ultra marathons, Jason, I'm not motivated to train every day, but I'll never lose the aspiration to see the finish line. Big difference. So yes, I use motivation and inspiration to get me out of bed and get out there and train. But if I don't keep that aspirational endeavor in the forefront of my mind, being a real estate artist, being an ultra marathoner, being a philanthrocapitalist, being a best-selling author, inspiration, motivation doesn't work.